Making It Last, where we share ideas to help families tackle major issues. I'm your host, Regina DeMeo, and with me today is Penelope Spain, who is one of the founders of Mentoring Today. And she's been helping kids on the road to rehab and reform for over 10 years now, right?
That's right.
Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, can you start by telling me how you guys decided to create this organization?
Sure. My co-founder, Whitney Lockheim, and I met when we were in law school, literally on the first day of orientation.
Oh, wow.
Together, we both became interested in public defense and defending kids who were in the juvenile justice system. But as our law school career progressed, we saw that if we became public defenders, we'd likely be representing the same kids over and over and over again, unless we were able to get into their lives, into their families, and deal with some of the underlying issues of their delinquency. That was where we could really make a change.
Right.
So in 2003, we began a tutoring program at the old Oak Hill Youth Center, which is now since closed. It was a pretty horrendous juvenile incarceration facility. And my first day in the facility was absolutely heartbreaking, and it changed my life forever. And I knew that I was going to dedicate my career to youth in the juvenile justice system from that day forward. So we expanded that tutoring program into what has become now Mentoring Today, which is a full-fledged mentoring and reentry program that really we connect with our young people while they're locked up, and we get to know them, get to know their goals, get to know their families, get to know really who they want to be, how they want to succeed in this world. And then when they come home, we actually help them put that into practice. And so we're really they're in the facility just to develop our relationship, and then we really launch that when they come back home and put them on the path to success.
That's amazing. So are you mostly staffed by full-time attorneys, or how do you get the help that you need?
We have 3 full-time staff attorneys,
okay,
and we really rely, beyond those attorneys, we have our fantastic board of directors and so many supporters who contribute to our work. But I also am so indebted to the volunteers who work with us, and they are all law students at American University. So they are the ones who are serving as mentors and as advocates for the young people who they connect with at the facility, which is, as I mentioned, Oak Hill Youth Center has closed. New Beginnings is a new facility that opened a few years ago for the same youth. And it's a much smaller, much better facility, but the youth still need a spokesperson and also somebody to help them learn to advocate for themselves. And so that's what our law student volunteers do.
Do you find that these kids are receptive to getting the help that you're offering?
So receptive.
Okay.
The young people who we serve, they're all young men.
What's the age range?
They're generally 17 to 22, 23.
Okay.
They're really on the cusp of adulthood, and unfortunately they're in what we call the deep end of the juvenile justice system. So there's the front end, the first-time offenders, low-level offenders. The ones who we serve are actually the repeat offenders, the ones who really have started a life of crime. But they've also realized that if they reoffend again, they're likely going to be in the adult jails or the federal prison system, and that's not a place that they want to go. So they know that they have to make a change, and they actually want to make a change. They know that they've burned a lot of bridges, unfortunately. A lot of service providers, and especially mentoring programs, will no longer serve them because of their criminal past. So we're one of the few organizations that say, we still believe in you. We know you can make a change in your life, and we're here to support you. We're also one of the few services for these young men that is voluntary. So we don't go in and mandate that they participate in our program. We actually explain to them what we do, talk to them about our program. We have some of our youth who've been with our program for many years come back in and explain to them the services that they've received. And then the young people get to opt into the program.
Okay.
So that voluntary aspect really, I think, makes a huge difference. They want to be there. They want to connect with their mentor.
And what are the services that you guys offer?
So we have one-on-one mentoring and advocacy, which is the program that I was mentioning to you before, with the law students coming in and really working with the youth for a long term. Most of our mentoring relationships last for well beyond 2 years, usually 3-4 years.
Wow.
So that is really the core of our program. Another aspect of our program that I'm super excited about and very proud of is that some of our mentees who had been with us for a long time decided that they wanted to give back to their peers. And so they have what's called the FREE project, which stands for Fighting for Rights, Education, and Employment. They go back into the juvenile facility and they lead peer discussion groups. And they're able to talk with their peers about the challenges that they faced when they returned from juvenile incarceration and how they overcame them. So we kind of recognize that young people really want to hear from other young people who have succeeded. They've stood in their same shoes.
Right.
And then they've been able to move beyond that. And it's very different than me coming in and giving advice. This is somebody who they know is very much has been through their similar paths, and then they can begin. The young people who are receiving these group conversations, they're able to envision themselves continuing on and being successful like the young leaders that are coming in.
Right. I mean, it's very different for you or I to go in and say, "Oh, it's all about hard work and doing what you need to do to get to the right place." But they want to hear from somebody that's walked in their shoes.
That's right.
That's very different.
That's right.
And I imagine the struggles are just things that you and I could never imagine, right? Like, I mean, we do have good educations, but these people may not be able to get into college at this point, right? And
That's
then housing may even be an issue if their families have decided that they're going to cut them out because they're reoffenders and they don't want them in their lives. Maybe, I don't know, like that. These are major issues that finding employment because of their criminal history could also be a problem. And they would want to hear from people that have actually dealt with these issues. How do you that's major, right? Housing and education and employment are things that many of us take for granted. And these kids, it's life or death.
That's right. You're hitting on exactly the issues that we deal with in our organization. I think one of the challenges is that if you or I were faced with losing our housing, we have skills and we have other connections that can really help us get through that challenging period.
Right.
And unfortunately, our young men oftentimes don't have those connections and those community supports. And so we call it social capital. And our mentors and our staff, we're really social capital. We're able to help our young people when they're in a time of crisis make connections and get through that crisis in a healthy way as opposed to returning to perhaps criminal patterns in order to make ends meet. But like you're saying, the young people who we serve have been through so much. Most of them have been through the foster care system. They've been from family to family to family, and then they unfortunately graduated into the juvenile delinquency system. So they've gone from, foster care families oftentimes, or, being jumped around from various family members, to then being in a locked facility, to coming out to a group home facility often. And then they're expected to, okay, you're 18, you're 19, you're an adult now, good luck. And just imagine how hard it was for some of us when we first went to college, learning how to manage our funds, how to get our laundry done. We were raised in a very stable environment, many of us,
right.
And our young people don't have those resources, but they're incredibly resilient and resourceful. And we see that by looking at our young men face to face and saying, "We believe in you. We know you can do this." Then their resilience comes to shine. Their determination comes out, and they say, "If you can help me make 1 or 2 links, I can do this." And that is what is so fulfilling about doing this work, is seeing a young man actually get that self-confidence and prepare to go into his first job or his first job interview, or move into his own apartment for the first time.
That's awesome. So do you have other organizations that you work with a lot to help these things happen?
Certainly. We very much believe in not duplicating services. Mm-hmm. And there are so many wonderful organizations in Washington, D.C. that really help provide some of the services that we're talking about, the housing, the education, employment or vocational training. And we believe that although our young people need all those services, we don't want to do those in-house. We think that having a partnership with other organizations that can do that is really important. But what makes us a little bit different in how we partner is that rather than just saying, here's a referral to this organization across town, these are their intake hours, and you need to bring your ID.
Right.
Good luck. Our mentors or our staff sometimes will go with the young people, make sure that they get in through the front door, that they're able to, when the receptionist asks for their ID and they forgot it at home, that's not the end of the conversation. That we're able to say, well, can we do the intake now? And he'll bring the ID next week. And that just helps our young people feel that they're actually, that these organizations do want to serve them. So we help our young people really access the services, and we help the service providers deliver the services that they want. So sometimes the service providers will partner with our mentors and advocates to say that, if there's a challenge in delivering the services, there's oftentimes just a small thing that we can do, just helping them get across town, helping them have metro fare cards so that they can get there for the first week until their stipend comes through. Very small things like that can make a big difference in someone's life.
I think you work with DCLY a lot, which was recently featured.
Yes. DC Lawyers for Youth, very much.
And then you've heard of Living Classrooms,
yes.
right? So, which has the Fresh Start program. And do you guys all work together?
Yes, in particular DC Lawyers for Youth. You were asking previously about our services, and we have the direct services with our young people, but we also know that we can only serve a very limited number of youth every year. And there are so many more young people in the juvenile justice system that continue to struggle without the supports that we provide. And so we work very closely with DC Lawyers for Youth to help make sure that we are fostering systemic change across the juvenile justice system that can really benefit all youth. So we work very closely with them in giving policy recommendations both for DC Council, the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services, and others in the juvenile justice, touching the juvenile justice system.
How many would you say you serve a year in terms of
mentees?
Yeah.
Yes, we serve an average of about 40 mentees a year.
Okay.
We accept only 5 or 6 new mentees each year because it's a very intensive program.
Yeah.
And so we really feel that it's more important to elevate quality over quantity.
Right.
So given the small number of our staff, we really make sure that we're able to handle the ongoing relationships, because once a mentee gets connected with us, they oftentimes will stay with us for many, many years. Because they're going through that first transition into young adulthood from 17 or 18 to 19, 20. But then sometimes they go through the next transition. Sometimes they start a family. And the first transition home is getting stabilized again with their mom, with their grandmother, with their parents. But then a year or two later, they're looking at establishing a safe and wonderful home environment with their girlfriend. And so there's a number of transitions that happen in those early 20s that we really stick it through with them. So that's another thing that really makes us unique, is that many organizations end services at age 18 or 21.
Right.
And we have one of our oldest mentees is 28 years old.
Oh, wow.
So we'll stick it with them, stick through it with them for as long as they find our services valuable.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you can provide guidance in areas that perhaps some of their family members cannot, right? I mean, that's essentially what you're doing. You're filling in a void.
That's right. We are filling in a void, and we're a stable and steady resource for them. But we don't replace their family. We don't replace their parents. And that's one thing in our training for our mentors and our supervision, is that we always are reminding our mentors that you're not stepping in as to be mom or dad.
Right.
And if you do, sometimes that is where the mentoring relationship can crumble and really suffer, because our young people have enough people in their lives telling them what to do and how to do it.
Right.
And the mentoring role is very different.
We're going to take a short break, and then we will be right back.
When it's time for lunch, a sandwich is a quick and easy choice. And with the right ingredients, it can be good and good for you. So I'm here today to see who can build the ultimate sandwich. All right, when the time is up, our judges will give you their scores. Ready, set, go! Okay, Jason starts out with a multi-grain roll. Ooh, Allison stuffing her pita with, yes, spinach, a great source of iron. Jason isn't skipping on the protein, adding plenty of smoked turkey, just like Allison's putting the finishing touches with crispy red bell peppers for a dose of vitamin A. Time! It looks like we have a tie. We'll need to call in our special guest referee.
Now these are what I call quick, delicious lunches. Whole grain breads, a whole variety of ingredients. There are so many different ways to build delicious, healthy sandwiches. These two get high marks in every category. I'd say you're both winners. America.
Let's get healthy together. Welcome back to Making It Last, where we share ideas to help families tackle major issues. I'm your host, Regina DeMeo, and with me today I have Penelope Spain from Mentoring Today. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So now that you've had this organization running for several years, what kind of feedback do you get from both the mentors and the mentees?
Well, I think our program is highly successful, and I know that because we cut reconviction rates in half through our program.
Wow.
But that just tells the numbers, and it's the stories and the feedback that make me know that we're doing a great job. So in the early years of our organization, I was certainly focused on the young people we serve. That's our target population. And the reputation we have amongst those young people is by far the most important aspect of the feedback that we get.
Right.
And I know we're doing a great job because our mentees refer other mentees or other young people into our programs. So those youth referrals tell us that the young people find our services helpful.
Right.
And as our program has developed and I began to look a little bit more broadly about the impact and the feedback that we're getting, I realized that the mentors themselves are huge. They receive so much through this program. Mm-hmm. They receive so much both on a personal level of personal development, but also in their legal education. So what we've come to learn over the years and really begin to focus on is the impact that this program has in their legal career, because they begin to look a little bit deeper into their clients' issues, and when they think about how best to help people, they're not looking at it just as a criminal justice issue or just as a legal services issue in terms of housing rights. They're able to understand the full panoply of issues that clients oftentimes face. So from the law students, we're recently getting a lot more feedback about how this has really enriched their education, and that really encourages me and makes me feel like we're really raising the next generation of lawyers to do good work in our community. The families also love our work. We have so many mothers and grandmothers and girlfriends who just say, wow, without Mentoring Today, I feel like I would have lost my child or I would have lost my boyfriend to the criminal justice system. And unfortunately, so many of the young men in our community have become victims of street violence, have been shot and killed, or they have succumbed to the pressures of the criminal patterns that began so much earlier and spend decades in the prison system. So this is a way that we can really help keep our young men in the community and a very active part of their families.
Do you have any services for counseling? Because my understanding is that there's a lot of pain going on and violence that they're witnessing in their communities, and I mean they have to have someone, I think, to kind of talk to about grief and loss.
That's right. I think so many of our young people are actually experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. They are living in something that is very akin to a war environment, where every day they're looking over their shoulder. They're living in fear of street violence, and that takes a toll when just their very physical well-being is challenged every day. So your question is very appropriate, and we both work with the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services to make sure that those mental health services are in place for our young people. But if, for whatever reason, the young person is more inclined to go outside of the system to receive those services, we partner with the Wentz Center for Loss and Healing, and we make referrals to them, especially in extreme moments of loss. If we had one young man whose best friend was shot into his lap, and he was dealing with just a horror that I can't even begin to fathom, and of course he was paralyzed by that experience, and unless we're able to get him those mental health services and those grief and loss services, he'll never be able to move beyond that moment. So yes, at those times, the grief and loss healing is our primary concern.
Right. I mean, I remember, I think it was this summer that I went to speak to the Fresh Start students at Living Classroom, and it was great because I was in there talking about forgiveness, the importance of forgiveness, and I shared my own personal story, and it was great because they could relate to it, right? I mean, once I explained, like, look, I grew up poor, I grew up without a dad, and I'm sure many of you can relate. All of them were like, yes, totally, they could get it. And then my point was, you know, I've had to learn a lot of things go, and I've had to learn to forgive, and that's how I was able to move forward. And I'm hoping that, you know, you can also do the same. And it was just a great open discussion. And when I said to them, the hardest thing sometimes is forgiving yourself, they totally got it.
That's right.
Right? And I think that they need to be able to understand that other people out there who maybe now are in very successful positions can still relate, and they care. Like, we need to be able to show these kids that we care and want to make a difference.
That's right. And our kids know that. They can figure that out very quickly, especially in a mentoring situation. Many of our mentors are from backgrounds that are similar or different from the young people. I myself, I don't look like a young African-American male from the inner city of Washington, D.C. But when I go to meet with our young people and I sit down with them and I begin engaging with them, they see that I care, and I am different, and I won't try to hide those differences, but we can connect on a human level. And if they begin to feel the care and attention that we as mentors and staff are able to give the young people, they can begin to look inside themselves and self-reflect and realize that there is something worth valuing in themselves. And then they begin to cultivate that self-respect, that self-confidence, and then they'll be able to grow and move beyond, like you're talking.
So what's it like for you to see this transformation? I mean, you come in at a point where, I mean, I'm not saying in a derogatory way, but these are broken individuals, right? And your job is to hopefully try and put them back together.
Yes, I wouldn't say that they're broken individuals. I think they are in certainly one of the lowest points in their life.
Right.
And a lot of things have broken around them, and they're suffering, certainly. And to go from that all-time low, oftentimes, seeing them, they've been locked up away from their family, they haven't had a home-cooked meal for months, they haven't had visitors, they feel so isolated, and this is a time as a teenager where you want to bond, you want to be in these social groups, you want to learn how to date, you want to play football with your friends, and you lose all of that, and that is so important to these young people. So I meet them at that very low level, and to be able to work with them for a few months and see them coming home and actually see them take off the uniform of being, when they're locked up, they have their uniforms.
Oh,
to
right.
lose the color coding of their unit where they're required to spend their days, and put on a suit and go into their first day of work, or we have one young man who's working as a chef now, and to put on his chef's coat and to have his chef knives in his pocket. That I'm sorry, I tear up with that. That is it turns their lives in such an amazing new direction, and to see that we've been a part of that in any small way is just the most rewarding experience I can imagine.
Yeah, and what you do is 10 times more difficult than what I have to do. I mean, people are getting divorced, and, as far as I'm concerned, it's a reorganization of the family. It's not the death of a family. You're just reorganizing. And, we get you to a better place, and then everybody kind of moves on. But, to some people, it's like it's a catastrophe. It's the end of the world. I think what you're dealing with is far, far more severe and far more challenging. But same thing. I also, I love seeing that transformation from somebody who first comes in and they think their life is over, and, then a couple of years later it's like, hey, I've remarried, I have new kids, and life is all okay.
I think hope is really important to the work that we're doing. Yeah. I think a lot of young men who we work with, when we first begin to connect with them, they either think that they're going to be locked up or unfortunately dead within a few years. So they live their lives accordingly. They live their lives on a day-to-day level instead of actually envisioning themselves in a few years and where they want to be and how they want to move into a career or a family situation that is more long term. So we do help them realize that their life is not over, that there is hope, that they can achieve. And I think one of the most important ways to do that is to show them the young people who were in their shoes, as I was mentioning earlier, who have succeeded, and give them hope that they too can succeed.
So how do you get most of your funding for these programs?
Our funding, we really rely on diversified funding. We recognize in this financial environment that we don't want to be in a situation where we lose one funder and we have to close our doors.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's happened to a number of nonprofits in the Washington, D.C. area.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a very diversified array of funds. We have a lot of family foundations who support us. We have a small D.C. government grant. And we also rely on individual donors, and it's those individual donations that give us the most flexibility to meet the needs, because they're very unrestricted funds.
As opposed to grants where you have to report and do all sorts of... There are timelines, right?
There are a lot of timelines. There are a lot of reports. It's a lot to juggle. It's unfortunately a large amount of the work that I do, but it's also rewarding to be able to share with our funders, be it individual donors or family foundations or even the D.C. government, and be able to say, look at what your support has done for our organization. And so I think it's my job to make sure that they recognize the impact that they as funders have had as well.
And do you think that the council, for example, is receptive to the work that's being done? Did you think they're more open to reforming some policies that are in place today?
I think they are. I think a few years ago there was a lot of discussion about the juvenile justice system. As Oak Hill Youth Center was closing, New Beginnings was opening, there was a real shift in, we went from a large facility at Oak Hill to a much smaller facility. New Beginnings is only 60 beds, so there's 60 is its capacity.
Okay.
So we really had to move a lot of services into the community to serve our young people, and really to serve our communities, because if these young people don't receive the services that they need, unfortunately, all of our families, all of our kids are at risk. We need to help these young people turn their lives around so that our cars aren't getting broken into, or that we're not being mugged on the streets. So in my mind, the work that we're doing, it benefits the young people that we serve, but it benefits all of us. It benefits this entire community.
Right. No. I mean, I think the work you do is fantastic, and I just wish that more people would, kind of find it in their, especially in the holidays, find it in their heart to, have a little more empathy for those that, especially this month. It's so clear that there's a haves and there's a lot of have-nots.
That's right.
Some people can't even get a tree for their house, let alone gifts. And those that are fortunate enough to have certain means, I'm hoping that they will step up during the holidays and do stuff for those that really can't afford a normal holiday.
I think that's right. And I think that really helps those who have not to know that others care about them, that they are not completely chastised and forgotten because they simply don't have financial resources.
So if people wanted to donate to your organization, you have a website and they can go and donate?
We do. It's www.mentoringtoday.org. And if you click on there, there's a donors page, and you can just click to donate. And we would be so happy to have additional support.
No, that would be great. Well, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for tuning in, and if you have any show ideas or would like to be a guest, please feel free to contact me at genxmarty@gmail.com. See you next week on Making It Last.